Alright guys, we are going to be reacting to the puzzling case of Marilyn and Sam Sheppard. I think this involves murder.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we're taking a look at the murder of Marilyn Sheppard, a homicide case that broke a quiet suburban town wide open and became the basis for a major Hollywood blockbuster.
Which one?
Jurassic Park?
Not that one, idiot.
I don't know. What's it? What movie is it?
I could tell.
Can you tell me? Would that give too much away?
I know you know the
Fugitive?
movie, so I can't tell you what it is because then
With
you're
Harrison
just gonna
Ford?
know. There's gonna be a point in this script where you're gonna be like, oh,
That film.
that film starring. You can put in the actor's name.
Interesting.
This is not gonna become a is it this movie guessing game.
It may.
That aside, I will say one thing interesting about this case is it's the first case we've ever covered where there's actually a conviction.
Oh.
So, that being said, let's get into it.
Good tease.
On February 21st, 1945, Dr. Samuel Sheppard and Marilyn Reese were married and settled near Lake Erie, Ohio. 2 years later, they had their first and only child, affectionately nicknamed Chip.
Revolutionary Road.
Oh yes, you're getting 2 sentences in, huh?
Yeah.
Does anybody even die in that film?
Maybe. I don't remember.
You don't even.
Wait, not
you just
Chip.
named a
People get
movie
married
without-
in it.
Sam was a respected neurosurgeon, and the attractive couple was believed to have a happy marriage. Their small suburban community was the kind where all their neighbors were friends, and maybe a little too friendly.
Uh-oh.
On July 3rd, 1954, the Sheppards hosted their neighbors for dinner, drinks, and a movie. Just after midnight, Sam fell asleep on the couch, and Marilyn said her goodbyes to the guests. What transpired in the next few hours has been the source of intense scrutiny and is still a mystery. At about 5:40 a.m. on July 4th, Mayor Spencer Hoke, a close friend of the Sheppards, awoke to a phone call from Sam saying, quote, "My God, Spence, get over here quick. I think they have killed Marilyn." End quote.
Oh no.
Hoke and his wife Esther raced to the house to find Sam shirtless in his study, holding his neck, seemingly in a state of shock. They called the police and first responders arrived by 6 a.m.
He falls asleep.
Settle down, stomach.
But then he's calling the cops.
He doesn't call the cops, he calls the mayor.
That's kind of cool.
calls them?
Skip the cops, call the mayor.
I mean, I guess it's a small
does the
town.
mayor
What the hell's the
do?
mayor gonna do?
I'd love to know the mayor.
Is the mayor
From the
also a
police
sheriff?
report, Marilyn's body was found lying upwards, her face turned toward the door, beaten beyond recognition. She had over 20 gashes curved deep into her face and scalp. Blood covered the sheets, and the walls were dripping with heavy spatter. Her pajamas were partially removed, leaving her exposed. Eventually, the autopsy determined Marilyn's time of death was, quote, about 4:30 a.m., end quote. It also, sadly, revealed that Marilyn had been 4 months pregnant with her second child, also a boy. According to Sheppard, he had been asleep downstairs when he heard Marilyn shout his name. He ran up to the bedroom to find Marilyn being attacked by a, quote, white form, end quote. They fought, but Sam was hit on the back of his neck and knocked out. When he came to, Marilyn was dead.
How does getting hit on the back of your neck knock you out?
And the white form was gone. Worried for his son's safety, Sam ran to Chip's room where he thankfully found him sleeping soundly. He then hurried downstairs to see the form exiting through the back door. He chased the tall and bushy-haired figure down to the shore of Lake Erie. Sam explained that he, quote, lunged or jumped and grasped, end quote, at the form on the beach, and then, quote, I felt myself twisting or choking, and this terminated my consciousness, end quote. When Sam woke, it was nearly dawn, and he was missing his shirt and watch.
It's weird.
That's weird.
I don't get it.
He wakes up from a nap, hears commotion upstairs. He goes
Sees
in.
a ghost.
No,
A white form.
I don't know why he keeps saying it's a form like it's Michael Myers.
A shape. The shape. He sees the shape.
He sees the shape. Truth or story, thus far?
Well, I mean, I don't really have a...
I mean, his memory's
you have to
fucked up
call
from
it
the
truth or
head
story.
trauma.
I guess I'd go truth. I don't know the man well enough to really gauge his character. Yeah, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
What makes you think this is more plausible than...
I don't know. He seems scared, you know?
I guess. I will say at this point it sounds like a story to me, mainly because all the details seem wildly convenient in terms of...
What's convenient about a white form, though? Because if you were lying, you'd be like, yeah, there's like a person.
If I'm fighting you and I've never seen you, first things I'm saying, big head, weird mustache, unkempt hair, kind of gangly, pale, big nose, kind of smelled like cottage cheese.
What?
I don't smell like cottage cheese, so throw that testimony out.
But you agree with all the other stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
In the early morning hours of July 4th, 1954, the police arrived at the Sheppard house to find a gruesome crime scene where the only witness to the possible murderer was also the most likely suspect.
Uh-oh.
With that, let's get into some theories.
By the way, do you know what film this is yet?
I don't know what film this is yet.
Okay. Our first theory...
The Fugitive? Is it The Fugitive?
Maybe.
I mean, yes or no? I didn't kill my wife.
Our first theory, and the most popular one, is that the entire story was made up and that Sam Sheppard murdered his wife in cold blood. There was no sign of forced entry and no murder weapon present at the scene. The desk drawers were neat, which would not be normal in the case of a robbery. Coroner Sam Gerber commented on the blood on Marilyn's
it is kinda
pillow,
weird.
saying, quote, "In this bloodstain, I could make out the impression of a surgical instrument," end quote. A weapon that would
Ow.
have been convenient for a neurosurgeon. In a bush
Also, I'm surprised that neurosurgery was a thing back in the 50s.
outside, Gerber found a canvas bag with Sam's wristwatch, fraternity ring, and key, all covered in blood.
Oh, he's a doctor.
Oh.
Sam Sheppard is a doctor.
Yeah, that was also...
Just like The Fugitive.
That was also in the first
Didn't
two
occur to
sentences.
me. Yeah, I got that now. When's Tommy Lee showing up?
I don't know. I think you're getting a little bit away from what we're talking about here. Why does this not look good for Sam?
Because all his shit is covered in blood.
In
Yeah.
the days following Marilyn's murder, investigators began honing in on Sam's rumored infidelities as a possible motive. Evidence pointed them to a woman named Susan Hayes, a lab technician at the hospital. Meanwhile, media fervor escalated. By July 20th, headlines read, quote, "Someone is getting away with murder," end quote, calling for Sam's arrest and conviction. On July 21st, the Cleveland Press headline read, quote, "Why no inquest? Do it now, Dr. Gerber," end quote. Sure enough, later that day, Dr. Gerber called an inquest and subpoenaed Sheppard to attend. The 3-day spectacle was a, quote, "media circus," end quote, culminating with Gerber asking Sam, quote, "Did you and Sue Hayes at any time sleep in the same bed?" end quote, to which Sam replied, quote, "Absolutely not," end quote. Following the inquest on July 30th, 1954, Sam Sheppard was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Marilyn Sheppard.
Well, they got to that quick, huh?
Yeah.
And honestly,
yeah, it
like,
was the
investigating
50s.
these things, like, we just sort of brush the fine details a little bit, really don't dig too deep. Seems like a huge pain in the ass. Just arrest somebody.
I'm not gonna even. There's no...
Granted, it's not our full-time jobs, but if it were mine, I'd be like, I just want to chill at the station, man.
I'm so glad you are not any kind of investigating authority.
I mean,
Anything
I've
ever.
never claimed to want to be.
Good.
I'm
Never
not
arises.
saying that, like, we should just throw innocent people in jail.
Kind of what you just said. You just
But
said,
I can
let's get this wrapped up before noon so I
I
can
can-
open a chili boy at
I'm
the
just
station.
saying I can understand the impulse to be like, ugh.
No, do your
This
fucking
guy,
job.
I mean, if this guy's putting himself in the situation where, oh, all your clothes are covered in blood, that doesn't happen to nice people.
They didn't do their
No, it
job.
doesn't.
The first trial began on October 18th. The prosecution relied heavily on Coroner Gerber's damning evidence at the scene, along with the heavy media pressure to convict. Their last witness was Susan Hayes. Hayes confirmed the 2-year-long affair, and when Sam took the stand, he finally admitted to the infidelity. Unfortunately, in addition to revealing that he'd lied,
Oh, no.
he also came off as arrogant and glib.
Do you
Oh,
buy
man.
the logic that they were clearly peddling here, which is he lied about that, could be lying about this murder?
Nah.
Two different things, right?
Two
To me.
different things.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
And it doesn't surprise me that he'd be arrogant and glib, because doctors are
Well, that part you could maybe not do that when you're on the stand.
probably hard to avoid.
Yeah.
You're playing God every day.
Well, I mean, I'm also a doctor.
He's like, I have fixed brains.
though
In the
every
50s.
doctor does have to have bedside manner. You can't put a little bit of that up on the stand.
I don't know if the surgeons have to.
I mean, I know someone who used to be a nurse, and she's a fucking bitch.
to do that, though.
Oh,
She does not like me at all. I mean, she thought I was lying when I said that her dog pooped on the rug last time she was here. And she thought I was lying, but that turd was way too big to be a rat turd.
guess you're knocked out.
They're like little Beethoven people.
How
They
you
just
doing
show
down
up
there,
and are
Mr. Bidet? I'm looking at your brain.
I am brilliant. I've done my work.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm done here.
On December 16th, the jury found Sam Sheppard
Hold on, let me just do this.
guilty of the second-degree murder of his wife, Marilyn.
Oh.
Sheppard
Oh.
received life in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years, but the damage reverberated far beyond his sentence. Sheppard's mother died by suicide just a few weeks later. His father passed away just days after that, and several years later, Marilyn's father would also die by suicide in 1963.
Okay, so there's, consequences to locking up the wrong person for, I get it. Look, I learned my lesson.
That's kind of why I was going on the do your job bit.
Well, you have the luxury of knowing where this little weird garden path ends up.
I still think generally you should do your job.
Within reason.
Not within reason. You do your job. Stop saying within
Shouldn't
reason.
kill you. I mean, don't be working nights and weekends.
No, what I said was when you step in between work hours, you do your job.
Okay, now that I respect.
That's what I said at the beginning.
Okay, I thought you were saying like stay till 7:30 p.m.
No.
That's dinner time.
But this was only Sheppard's first trial. His brothers continued to support him even after the devastating toll the trial had on their family. They hired a forensic scientist, Dr. Paul Leland Kirk, to review the state's physical evidence because Coroner Gerber had not introduced any fingerprint or blood evidence that could have exonerated their brother. Gerber had decided shortly after he arrived at the scene that Sam was guilty, telling another detective, quote, "It's obvious that the doctor did it," end quote. In 1961, Sheppard's brothers hired a new attorney, F. Lee Bailey, who got the trial reopened on grounds that it was poorly managed by the presiding judge, Edward Blythen. Bailey argued that Judge Blythen denied Sheppard's defense motion to move the trial out of Cleveland, where there was no chance of a fair trial due to the biased press coverage, because he was seeking re-election, and used the spectacle for his own gain.
You're this man.
I am this man.
You're a doctor. Ryan Bergara is a doctor.
Look at me, Ryan, be a doctor.
You've murdered your wife.
Oh.
Would your brother, Jake, nice guy.
Can we go back to the doctor part just for
You're
a
a
second?
doctor.
What does my diploma look like?
I don't know, but it's spattered with blood.
Is it framed nicely? Where is it in my den?
Yeah, it's in your den.
Sick. Okay, go back to go.
Next to your wife's bleeding body.
Okay. Oof.
Because you've murdered her.
Jesus Christ. I didn't murder her though.
Didn't you?
I didn't.
I don't care. I got him there.
You're such a fucking idiot.
We got him there.
Popular syndicated columnist Dorothy Kilgallen, who covered the original trial, confessed years later that she had an unethical private conversation with Judge Blythen, in which he told her he saw the case as, quote, open and shut, end quote, and, quote, he's guilty as hell, end quote. Had she reported this at the time, Blythen would have been removed from the case.
Sounds like a person who should be presiding over this murder case.
Yeah, very unbiased judge.
The most unjudgely thing I've ever heard, the most unhonorable thing I've ever heard. That's crazy.
Shouldn't be doing that as a judge.
You shouldn't.
I think you should go in there and hear him out, at the very least.
He's the guy that's like, we got Applebee's in 12.
Yeah, he's me.
We got to get out of here. That dude's guilty as hell. I got
He's
some
me
potatoes.
as a judge.
Yeah, that's Shane Madej as a judge.
By July 15th, 1964, Bailey's petition that Judge Blythen failed to shield the jury from media, making them biased, was granted. The court called Sheppard's trial a, quote, mockery of justice, end quote, and ordered his release. Sheppard's retrial began on October 24th, 1966. Once on the stand, forensic scientist Dr. Kirk analyzed that the blood splatter would have covered the murderer in the victim's blood, but Sam only had one spot on his pants. Kirk also determined that much of the splatter came from the backswing of the weapon, indicating the murderer had used their left hand, but Sam was right-handed. He also noted that Marilyn's teeth were found underneath her body, meaning that she had likely broken them while biting her attacker. Sam had no bite marks or open wounds when he was examined at the hospital. But the most damning evidence was when Kirk revealed the largest blood spot found on the closet door didn't match Marilyn or Sam's, so was likely from a third party entirely.
Forensic science is crazy to me.
Yeah. Also not fun. I know people have a passion for these things, but gosh, imagine going home and being like, well, how's your day? How was my day? I don't know. It was great. I found some teeth under a lady.
Yeah, or I covered a knife in fake blood and I went like this to see where it would fly.
That actually sounds pretty fun. You know, they leave bodies decomposing out in the field. That's how they know. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. They leave bodies out and they just let them decompose, and based on how those look after a certain, that's how they like date how long bodies have been decomposing. Isn't that incredible?
Didn't you say you wanted your body to be left in the field when you die?
It's called a sky burial, and I want the vultures to eat me.
I still think dropping you out of a plane and seeing where you land is funnier.
That's
but
funny too. Do whatever the hell you want.
just me at a red light trying to change the radio station, just
Yeah, sure.
right on the roof of my car.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
It's a noodle man.
Which leads us to our second theory. Our second theory is that Sam Sheppard was telling the truth, and his wife was murdered by a, quote, bushy-haired white form, end quote. Beyond Sam's statement, as many as 3 witnesses testified to seeing someone matching that description. Richard and Betty Knitter told the police they saw such a man near the Sheppard's home around 3:30 to 4 o'clock a.m. on the morning of the murder, which lines up with Marilyn's time of death at around 4:30 a.m.
Just really quickly, I don't know why it didn't occur to me till now. What are Richard and Betty Knitter doing up at 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning? They have the presence of mind while doing that to look out the window.
Maybe they're freaks, man.
It looks like a bushy-haired white form.
Maybe they're like freaks.
Or they're like
Maybe they're
against
like-
the window,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
look
that's
at
what
the
I'm
neighborhood,
saying. Yeah,
look at
yeah,
the neighborhood
yeah,
while
yeah.
we do it. Who's that guy? I don't know. And just right back to sweat time.
Wrinkle, wrinkle, wrinkle. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about sex.
I just know from my own personal experience, when I hear a bump in the night, my immediate reaction is not to go to the
You go,
window.
ooh,
No, what happens
a
is...
phantom has entered my home.
Yeah, that's exactly what I talked exactly like that.
Boop, boop, boop. Hello, is this 911?
And I have a cartoon phone, too.
The devil is here. Send God.
They described him as, quote, white, between 32 and 42 years of age, wide nose, bushy crew-cut hair, light auburn in color, bushy eyebrows, long sideburns, end quote. This was enough detail to provide a forensic sketch.
Sounds like Kramer.
No, nor do
If
I.
that's the last face I saw before leaving this earthly coil, I wouldn't like it.
The presence of the bushy-haired man was substantiated in Sheppard's first trial by medical professionals who attested to the seriousness of the injuries he sustained fighting Marilyn's attacker. A nurse testified that Sam's, quote, feet were all shriveled up, as if they had been in water a long time, end quote, consistent with Sam's story that he got knocked out on the shore. A radiologist said Sam's x-ray revealed a probable fracture of his second cervical vertebra. 2 other doctors said there was no way to fake his neck spasms or the swelling at the base of his skull.
Yeah, it's not like he could have committed to the craft, knocked himself out in the back of the head, and then put his feet in a bucket of water or something like that.
I mean, he could have knocked himself out by the lake, but
That feels like an insane amount
that's too
of...
much.
But it was Sam Sheppard's son, Chip, who would provide a name to a bushy-haired face. He had spent years trying to solve his mother's murder, and he believed that the blood belonged to Richard Eberling. Richard Eberling had been the Sheppard's handyman for a time and had intimate knowledge of the house's layout, including an obscure basement entrance. Additionally, he had been found in possession of 2 stolen cocktail rings that had belonged to Marilyn Sheppard. However, when questioned about the murder, he passed a polygraph test where he denied killing Marilyn, which cleared him of being investigated further.
Polygraphs are stupid.
Baloney.
Yeah. Do we need to say anything more about that?
No, they're bullshit.
Also, he had 2 rings that were stolen. I'm not saying that every time somebody in the house steals something, they're a murderer, but it doesn't look great.
No. I stole a little Lego man from one of my friends growing up. Didn't murder him.
Yeah.
Despite being cleared, in 1989, Eberling was convicted of the aggravated murder of Ethel May Durkin. 9 years into his sentence, Eberling gave a deathbed confession that he had also killed Marilyn Sheppard. One witness testified, quote, Eberling told me that he had killed her and that he hit her husband on the head with a pail, and that in Eberling's words, the bitch bit the hell out of me, End quote.
As much as like infidelity and petty theft don't necessarily, equate, well, this person is morally bankrupt enough to commit a murder, I would argue that committing a different murder
probably equates to committing another murder.
I think you have it in you at that point to maybe murder someone else.
I agree with that analysis.
Case closed. Lock him up. So I guess he's dead.
He's dead.
Put a skeleton in jail. Do they have like a special graveyard for murderers?
I don't think they do. That's an interesting thought, though. Like, what do you...
It's a cool idea. Start a GoFundMe.
I mean, it's prison graveyards.
But was Richard Eberling telling the truth? Besides the main theories, there were two other suspects that raised some questions. The first one was Esther Hoke. F. Lee Bailey believed that the murder of Marilyn Sheppard could have only been perpetuated by another woman. There were rumors that Marilyn was having an affair with Esther's husband Spencer, the mayor, and the first person Sam called that fateful morning. Bailey said of Hoke's motive and means, quote, "One possible motive is feminine jealous hatred, sparked to action by some event disturbing to the killer. A jealous killing requires a woman killer," end quote.
Yeah,
Well,
women are
everyone
more-
knows a jealous killing.
I mean, women are more likely to poison people, but Eileen Wuornos, yeah, she just, like, used guns and stuff. I mean, we don't always poison people.
Requires a woman killer.
Everybody knows that. Trust me, I'm a doctor.
Trust me, I'm a man.
During the retrial, Bailey got Esther to admit she had ignited her coal fireplace the morning of the murder, despite the fact that it had been a warm summer evening. He implied she might have been trying to burn bloody clothes and other evidence, and also that she was left-handed, like the killer. However, there was no evidence to prove Spencer and Marilyn had an intimate sexual relationship, and seemingly, no further legal action was ever taken against the Hokes.
I'm tired of this. What is this guy talking about?
This seems like a flailing,
Yeah.
especially
I think it
when
was the
it's
handyman.
preceded by the handyman. This seems kind of out of left field.
The
Yeah.
second suspect was Major James Call. Ex-FBI agent Bernard Connors believed that Marilyn was murdered by Major James Call, an Air Force pilot who went AWOL in 1954 to embark on a murderous crime spree. Connors said the Sheppard murder fits with Call's MO, in which he would break into a house of sleeping people and use violence against anyone he came across. A small crowbar found in Call's possession could have been used to cause Marilyn's injuries. Even more compelling, Marilyn likely bit her attacker, and Call had a scar that seemed to be from a deep bite mark on his left index finger. When they captured Call,
Dude.
they questioned him about Marilyn's murder, but never pursued the link.
Where's this guy coming from? I don't know about this man. Who is this man?
I mean, I think this is kind of common in most of these these murder cases.
Where they try
Yeah.
to link it to a notorious killer.
Serial killer. It just
Yeah.
seems like, if not for the sensationalized aspect of it,
Yeah.
it's an easy theory to posit.
Can I be honest with you? This man sounds scary.
Yeah,
Obviously,
he
this
does.
man's a murderer. I don't know if he's the murderer for this case.
Maybe not our murderer, but a murderer.
This
Yep.
sounds kind of like when you're asked to give like a quarterly report to your business and you have to have a certain amount of figures to make it look like you were doing a good job.
Yeah.
So as a detective, you need a certain amount of theories and you just pad it with this.
Yeah.
You pad it. You pad your stats a little
he
bit.
did.
Yeah, you're making your essay look a little more
Exactly. And
up in the font size.
You're
a
up.
little bit.
You're up in the font size of periods.
Yes.
That's what this person's doing.
Is that what people do? The periods?
I used to do it all the time.
Just fat circles in the middle.
They would never know. It was enough. It was enough.
And now he solves crimes.
But whether it was Hook, Call, Eberling, or simply just not Sheppard, reasonable doubt was all they had to prove.
I would say case closed in that aspect.
Yeah.
Reasonable doubt has been proven in my mind
Yeah.
that he did not do it.
I agree. And he spent
Same
roughly a
here.
decade in jail. So
Wasted taxpayer
Okay,
money.
I thought you were getting choked up for a second.
no.
I was like, this is what does it?
All because some lazy judge.
Lazy
Also, I mean,
cunt.
like, even without the judge, your spouse gets murdered. You're suspect number one. That's just how the game goes. If
Wa-
it wasn't for that judge,
Keep an eye on your spouses.
make sure they
Look
don't
out
get.
for them.
That's Shane Madej's Disclaimer, make sure your spouse does not get murdered at all costs.
You should. That's part of the deal.
And in June 1966, the Supreme Court ruled that Sheppard did not get a fair trial in an 8-to-1 vote. Sheppard was acquitted. His innocence, however, remains in question.
Yeah.
The last years of Sheppard's life were not necessarily happy ones. Following his release, he married a German woman who he had exchanged letters with while in prison. It was later discovered that her half-sister was the wife of Joseph Goebbels, Adolf Hitler's propaganda
like,
minister.
Wait, what?
That's kind of like something that can be like inevitable to happen. If you're dating someone from Germany that was born in that time period, that a lot of the bad guys were born in. Yeah, Germany has some dirty history. I mean, like, let's face it, I might have a war criminal in my bloodline. Who doesn't?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Not good. I mean, you know, half-sister, so...
I mean, that's just
It'd
awkward.
be fine. You know, we've all got weird cousins, and...
I'm the weird cousin.
I mean, it doesn't mean that she's a bad person.
That's right. Like, we got bad apples in our families. I'm sure they're out there.
Like, if my brother went on a murder spree, I'm not a murderer.
No, you're a
Yeah.
nice guy.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I think you're a nice guy, too.
Also, for the record, I don't think Jake would go on a murder spree.
And I don't think Scott would go on a murder spree.
We have great brothers.
What about us? Would you go on
No,
a
I
murder
wouldn't go on a murder spree.
Neither would I.
Okay, so we're good.
Sheppard had his medical license reinstated, then soon revoked after 2 patients died in surgery.
Well, he's been out of this
His
field
German
for 10
bride
years.
divorced him, and he became a professional wrestler,
What?
working under the name Killer.
I'm happy for him.
I will normally
It's
not...
kind of cool that he became a wrestler. I think that kind of makes up for it.
You think that's a normal pivot you see? Neurosurgeon to wrestler? How many neurosurgeons...
It's not normal. That's why I kind of applaud it. You don't become a wrestler because you don't love wrestling.
I suppose, but to me it's as weird as if you became a pro wrestler after we do this.
Now I kind of want to see a sequel to The Fugitive.
Holy shit, man.
He also ended up marrying the 19-year-old daughter of his wrestling manager. At 46 years old, he died from liver failure after many years of alcohol abuse and depression.
It's certainly one of the stranger 6-year arcs I've ever seen. It's a sad arc that has weird, interesting details in it.
While not guilty, Sam Sheppard was never really proven innocent. The court of public opinion, bolstered by the ongoing media frenzy surrounding his wife's murder, made finding the truth impossible. Sheppard's release was more about the mismanagement of the trial rather than the actual evidence in his defense. But one thing is for certain. In the early morning hours of the 4th of July, 1954, Marilyn Sheppard was brutally murdered. And the truth of who killed her will remain unsolved.
What a doozy. Good
Yeah.
one, Ryan.
It's crazy. You know, that is an important thing to note. As crazy as the circus was that surrounded Sam Sheppard, lost in it sometimes is the fact that Marilyn Sheppard was murdered.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a tragedy. And tacking on to that, it's a tragedy what happened to Sam Sheppard if he in fact did not do it.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cling on to the memory of him being a pro wrestler.
I was gonna
because
say-
it makes me happy.
All of these stories are awful and miserable, and I walk away from them feeling sad, and I don't enjoy hearing them. But the one thing we can hang on to is that maybe he loved being a wrestler.
Maybe in his
Yeah.
last days he enjoyed giving a nice elbow.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
that's the
hey,
his stage.
I'm walking away with that, and no one can take it away from me.
I'm fine with that.
So, yeah, I think it was the handyman. Who do you think killed Marilyn Sheppard?